you have to select well your surroundings, because that either takes you on up or just takes you very down.
This is Space for All. Welcome to Space for All. I'm your host, Valerie McKiernan. Today we're talking to Rania Toukebri. Rania is a space systems architect and a mentor for the UN Space for Women program. Let's listen in to my conversation with Rania. Can we get started by talking about how you got into the space industry? How did you get to be in the position you are today?
Thank you for the introduction. So first of all, as an intro, so I'm Rania Toukebri. I am doing space systems architecture, and right now as senior team leader. How I came in space, it's something that started certainly with passion, something I love doing, but certainly with lots of curiosity and things I wanted to do to find out what's beyond the limits, what we can do to reach the limitless, to see the horizon. So it's a childhood dream that just came along with studies and so on. So I tried to find out what tools we need to reach it, how we can make it happen, what are the things I can do in order to reach out to that unlimited horizon. So how it came, just with lots of years, after lots of mathematics, lots of physics, and lots of other things related to engineering. So I found out the right tool, the right path. So there are, of course, multiple paths to reach it out. But that's a very passionate path. Quite difficult, but very passionate.
So you had this passion, right? I mean, you're from a country that doesn't really have a space program, correct?
True, yeah, true.
How did you then go and join the space industry from there?
In fact, it's something, probably we don't have a space program at that time, but actually we had few Tunisian persons who are already working in that industry. And among them, I had family members who were part of the NASA. So they were just giving me this kind of inspiration to tell me that this is feasible. This is not something impossible to do or unreachable. So that gave me a little bit the idea to kick off or to start to make that one step further. But besides that, there was lots of inspiring people on my way, not only from family, but also friends, people who were mentors for me. So that was giving me lots of strength, lots of hope, and lots of also tips and tricks in order to understand your value and your added value, because at that way, in order to succeed in space, you don't need to be just an aerospace engineer or just a space lawyer. You need to be the space lawyer or the space engineer in order for you to make a real impact on that time.
So what country are you from? Where do you call home?
It's Tunisia. I'm from Tunisia. It's a very beautiful country in North Africa, and where everybody's great here. And we are actually starting a space program. So it's now very new. We have started since the 70s, 80s, but it was only for downlinking, for downstreaming, to have the data from satellites. We had a space program. We were part of UN Copius already some years ago, but actually now we started to make products and we started producing in space. So we started making our first satellite 2 years ago, and we'll have the next one very soon, end of this year, and also others will come up.
Wow. That's incredible. So you said that you had you had family that was involved with NASA. Mm-hmm. What part did they play at NASA as you were growing up?
So they were part of the propulsion system. So it was my uncle who was a main engineer, so chief engineer for the space propulsion, all the space propulsion systems for the projects for NASA at that time. And I had another uncle who is working in the in telecommunication satellites, who was pretty much involved with European industry, but then later on with the American industry. So it was something that involved in both propulsion systems, launchers, and satellites. So I understood that I will be working either on that or on the other one, so I cannot just escape from this.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you grew up with that background. You grew up with that support system in your family and friends and things like that. What was your first step to actually making this industry a part of your career path?
In the beginning, I knew that I could not have a first in aerospace diploma. So I understood that I had to make studies that will be suitable or used later on. So what I did is that I considered that I am building a puzzle. So I have certain things that I must have in my CV in order to reach out my final goal. It's true that it took long years to make it happen. But what I started doing, I studied instrumentation and electronics in Tunisia. So I started my path in Tunisia. So I got my engineering diploma, but it's extremely useful for later. Then I have done embedded systems for space applications, and I have done also computer science for space applications. For all these three diplomas I did, before doing my PhD, it's actually the pieces I needed to build up a spacecraft, a part of a spacecraft. So I wanted just to have this broad idea of understanding each one of them without neglecting every piece or every expertise on it. So, and then later on, when I did some years in the industry, I decided my way, what kind of PhD I need to do. And that's the last piece of puzzle I considered in order for me to make that touch or to make that impact in the space industry. So that's how I consider people to do, or I'd suggest people to do, is that you need to find out what you can add. So what is your strength point? And of course, with the weakness you have as well, so you can understand when you have the rejections, when you have the failures, you will understand on what you should work on, and the things you have to improve. That comes with the time. So during the path you follow, and after getting all the failures you get, you will understand at the end what you have to improve.
Okay, so you're on your way to get your PhD and you're working full time, right?
Yes, true.
So what are you currently doing in the areas? What's your current career?
Okay, that's a little bit crazy. I should admit that I just barely sleep. I work and I do studies as well on PhD. I go to workshops as well, and I go to conferences at the same time, and I try to travel to see my family. That's a little bit crazy, but actually that's the only way I found to understand which path I should follow. Because in the beginning, in the beginning of my career, I was so excited to know everything about space. I was so excited to know the big organizations, the who are doing the biggest parts of space, all the projects that are interesting. I wanted to be involved in. That's quite impossible. It's true, but I wanted to have this. I would say in the first 10 years of my career, I wanted to have this broad idea in order for me to choose well what I wanted to choose. So what I do a full-time job right now as senior team leader, and I think also I needed some time to reach that level, which is great. And what I do, I'm so lucky that I'm already involved in so many great projects along the last 10 years. I worked on a Galileo second batch constellation. For a couple of years, I worked on Jupiter icy moon satellite, on the solid state mass memory, of course, because each of them, I'm not responsible of the entire satellite for sure. I'm responsible just of small unit or a small system that is crucial for sure. I worked for the planetary defense exercise, the Eyewitness. It's a satellite called Hera that will be launched hopefully this year with Ariane 6. And I worked also on Plato telescope. It's a great telescope that is gonna look for planets like Earth that will be in other galaxies. So these are for me pioneer projects. To be honest, I have selected all of them. I would say I have selected even others, but I have been rejected, which is completely normal. So that gave me this understanding of what I'm lacking, what I needed to improve. Where are the things I need to work on myself, not only technically speaking, but also for communication, for social skills, for soft skills, or things I needed to consider.
So you select your projects at your company?
So it's up to
Okay.
you. Either you choose a company because what happened is that there is the agency, so the European Space Agency, for example, that has the main mission.
Mhm.
There is a main contractors with ESA who are basically Airbus, Thales, OHB, and so on. So you can choose yourself the company for that project. Um, it's just for sure a little bit risky because you don't stay all the time in one company. It's not a comfort zone, but it's for you an opportunity to grow. So what I wanted is that I tried to apply not only for the name of the company, but for the project itself. And sometimes when I am within the ESA team, unfortunately, because of my Tunisian nationality, I could not work within ESA itself.
Okay.
Because European Space Agency requires European citizens, which is understandable. But what I try to do is that I know very well the team who is doing the mission because I am already in the early stages of that design of the mission, thanks to the work I've been doing also on the side. So I know a little bit what's going on. But what I don't know is that how I can support, which unit I can support with my Tunisian nationality. So I should admit that in the beginning, it was quite difficult because it was not a permanent work with one company, one agency. So I was selecting the company or the agency that I could work for that specific project. Because for me, that was the key to understand better in a big project where a big budget is put on, where new research is put on, new instruments are used, where you can practice better the masters you got, because my main focus was a brain of a satellite or spacecraft, which is an onboard computer and the crypto units. And that was for me the main thing that we need to understand, because that manages the commands, that manages the different parts of the spacecraft, all the communication with the ground station, basically everything. So I wanted to use that knowledge. And that was thanks to, as I said, to the different big projects I was working on as well.
So your 9 to 5, it sounds like, is pretty much taken up by these different projects you're working on. And then after that, you're doing research for your PhD on nights and weekends and attending conferences. That's a lot.
Nights and weekends.
That's a lot. But you've gotten so far in your career, so it just speaks volumes to what you've been doing and all that effort you've put in. Where are you looking to go in your career? What are you pushing towards once you get your PhD?
So the choice of my PhD was not the PhD diploma itself. For me, it was quite a nonsense if you go to make masters for the master or for the PhD or for a postdoc or even to work for that company or to work for that agency. For me, it doesn't make sense. What I wanted to do is that I could collaborate I could add to the space sector with something for my brain. So what I was doing, as I told you, in my different pieces of puzzle, I was trying to build up a big overview of the systems existing. And that was a major part that I could find a little bit tricky to do. There was lots of challenges on it. There was lots of the same architecture, always built the same way through the different projects I was in. So it's true that space focuses a lot on the security and safety for their systems, because they want to, if it's working well, it's following the requirements, we keep it as it is, we don't want big changes. That's the way space systems work. But what I wanted actually is to make something additional, something a little bit more innovative, keeping up the security and safety level. So what I'm doing is I'm working on a new type of onboard computers based on Euro-based systems, so a neuromorphic platform. So the neuromorphic platform, it's a study that has been done since the 80s, so it was some years ago, but it was always something that was on paper, so still done on some hardwares, but with lots of challenges, and things have not been improving quite a lot. And these neuro-based systems have been done in different other industries that made a big jump in the computer design and so on. But it's quite rare that we can find it in the space sector. We have it for a few applications, for Earth observation satellites and so on, but never for these big long mission satellites, for the moon mission and so on. And that part was my research, is how I can make this neuromorphic platform or neuro-based system that can make the performances better, that can make that save us lots of power, that can save us lots of memory, in order to allow our astronauts to do the work better, or even to have this autonomous system that can manage the work itself. So we don't need an intervention of the human to make the maintenance or to work on the system itself. So that's my concern, is that it's quite risky for people to be gone to Mars, to go to the moon sometimes, some parts of the moon. So what I want is that I want to be that system that can manage the work itself without risking life of people.
I want to chat a little bit about your UN experience and how you got involved in the UN. Can you tell me a bit about how you got involved in what the UN program is that you're involved with?
In the beginning, I was participating to symposiums within my university and within my organization a few years ago for involving emerging countries to space sector. So that was for the African countries at that time. And I was pretty much concerned to make some change in my continent, in Africa. And I was a little bit angry sometimes when I find that they basically don't know how important it is. So I wanted to raise awareness about that, and that was thankfully through the UN body. So the UN body is an excellent body because it is neutral and central one, and it has the job to raise awareness about space, to talk about the application we can use, to try to solve these sustainable development goals and make that link, and to build up, to put on the table all the experts, the government, the industry, everybody, so that we can have a common understanding of what is space
Mm.
application, how we can use it, how we can determine a project. You don't need lots of money to make it. Just a small CubeSat can solve a part of your problems. So that was among the things I started doing because I was so concerned about that. So that was my first pillars. I was participating with my technical knowledge, so as technical expert, and little by little, I found myself in that UN loop. So I was participating in the United Nations of Disarmament Research Office for some studies. I was involved as well for the United Nations Office of
Mm.
Outer Space Affairs, so UNOSA, as well for some projects. And I was involved in that program, Space for Women program. So that Space for Women program, of course, it came after a few years. So I could be a mentor for a few ladies who wanted to start a space career in space. So they wanted to be either an engineer or they want to be just a project manager for a space project, who they wanted to make some work for space. It doesn't matter what kind of position they do. It's like a dream for everyone, for every girl to make it. So I had a chance to be already a mentor for 2 years, and ongoing because I'm also doing it on the way right now. And that was very good for me as well because I could understand also how to pass the information easily, how to make my words more understandable. So how to pass the information and make a real impact in the community. And that's how I made my
It's
work for
incredible.
Space
And
for Women.
what have you found after those 2 years? Is there something or some specific recommendation that you pass on to these women that you're mentoring, or a common hurdle that you're seeing with the women that you're mentoring?
The first thing I tell them is that you don't need to have an aerospace diploma to work for space. That's the thing I always say to everybody. You need to be good on what you're doing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't need to be technical either. So there is so many ways to kick off a space career, and it should be started exactly where you are right now. So you can start there because now the space industry, it started having people. So we are starting to build a space society, and a space society needs all the competences, need all expertise to build up the new projects we have, to build up the new space stations we will have. So right now, maybe we're not very aware, but right now all the focus will be out there. So of course we have all the infrastructure on Earth, but so many things will be happening from space. So that's why I tell them you can start from whatever you have. You can use your current diplomas, your current studies, your current projects to build up the things for space. But you need to manage exactly what you're doing. If you are doing mechanical engineering, you have to be a very good mechanical engineer. If you are doing things related to chemical products or something like this, you have to be very good on that because we do need it for the propulsion systems. So I try to make that link between what they have and what they need to reach at the end. Plus, of course, I try to support them in terms of um, I tell them that you having a technical background is good, but you need also to understand other factors. You have to understand what does mean a space policy, what does mean a space program, how you can participate to that. You have to understand what are your governments doing, the big institutions doing, what are the biggest challenges right now, and how you can be active. Because being passive and try just to get a diploma or just be in that company you're not doing a big impact. So you're not playing a big role there. So you need to know where you can add your added value, your input. women need to understand about also valuing themselves. So for space is something more related to men, unfortunately, but it's true that it's changing. But they need to understand that gender doesn't matter. So they have really to stop being afraid from being surrounded by men, or to give them the opportunity to speak up, or to just give their added value, and they just go ahead, because at the end, space projects are need to make that job perfectly in that amount of time in order for you to save your budget. That's how I calculate it. So if you are doing it good,
Yes.
you will be chosen, either you're a man or a woman. If you are doing your job perfectly, so you can communicate easily, you have that soft skill, you speak very well the language, you have all the skills you need to make it happen. So being a woman is not a barrier for you to work for space.
Yeah. And so when you look back on your career so far, you have worked with so many different people, you've worked with so many different countries. Is there anything that you wish you knew when you first started out that you now know?
The first thing I want to add is that you are the lead character of your story. So I'm saying this because sometimes I have the impression that I am taken by the hand, or I am just following what's going on, or I'm just doing the things that society wants or likes. Unfortunately, we sometimes fall in that trap, and I did many years ago when I did some choices in my career, and that was wrong. And the second thing I really regret, maybe not regret, I learned from, is that when you lose time on useless conversations or useless tasks, or something that don't have any meaning for you. So everything you do, it's every hour you spend on what you're doing, it's something you are building for the next 5 to 10 years. Maybe if you fail, if you lose time, this, you have to learn from it. You have to consider this as something you can use later. That's the thing I try to do, even though some lost time, maybe sometimes I could make something better out of it. But it's something I really suggest others to do, is that you have to select very well the project you do, people you're surrounded with. And that's very important. You have to select well your surroundings, because that either it takes you top on up, or just takes you very down. So all the feedbacks you get, unfortunately, very negative ones, that can really make you disappointed, that can add that negativity in you, that doesn't allow you to make a step forward. So you just try to ignore that. Try to surround yourself with people who have the same dream as you, or that have that passion to succeed at the end. So because thanks to these people, thanks to this surrounding, you will know your value, you will know what you can add. So selecting people, and also understanding the big picture of what's going on. So all the political considerations, all the economical considerations, all the social considerations are something you have to add in the picture. So you're not isolated. You are living in a life that is all connected in there. So you have to know where you are, where you're positioned, and you have to consider that you are in an international picture. You're no longer in that national or regional place. So now everybody is competing with everybody, if you consider competition as something important. So you have to consider yourself a part of that international landscape, and you have to understand where you are. And of course, you don't need you don't have to be isolated, and you don't need to lose your time just behind your computer. You have to see what's going on, and you have, based on that, you have to build up your next steps.
So spend your time wisely and make sure you surround yourself
Exactly.
with people who are supportive, not just tearing you down.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people coming out of university and just getting started and having no idea what they're going to do are going to make some missteps. But not wasting your time is definitely a really good one, not just kind of floundering about. So that's a really good point. Um, you know, you've been an advocate for space programs in your country and in other countries. Is there anything that we can do better to support diversity in our industry, to do a better job of making sure everyone knows they can be a part of the space industry?
What's for sure that we cannot change our societies today, unfortunately. It takes some time to make it different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is actually what I suggest to do is to have more and more these mentorship programs, because ladies are afraid to make the first step. They consider this a little bit complex, dangerous, risky, mainly risky, because that doesn't allow them to make that step. They don't sometimes accept rejections. So what we need is that we need people who support them. They need all that attention and support and guidance in the beginning in order to make that first step. Once we will have them, so you can imagine it's going to be a pyramid. So once we have that person that can do the mentorship for 10 persons, that person will have 10 more, and we'll have 100, and so on and so on. So like that, we will have this kind of support system that will be built on passing the knowledge in a very good way and giving the voice to other ladies to support them again and again to be active, to have an active role. What makes me angry sometimes is that sometimes they put women on the team just because they want women in the team. It's not because they are good.
So
So it's a
frustrating
little
when
bit
that happens. So like, oh, we
exactly. So
have our
I don't
one
know why they
woman.
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's a
see that as
nonsense.
well. Yeah. And mentorships is something that I didn't really think of until recently. I always recognized that I didn't have a mentor, right? That I need to go figure out how to get one. But having companies like Airbus, Boeing, Coherent, doing mentorships, as well as the UN and other government agencies doing mentorships, that's a really great way to get women more involved and people of all diversities more involved and really understanding that you can also be in this industry. Thank you so much for joining today. I am so inspired by you and your
Thank you.
entire story. Thank you for joining us today on the Space for All podcast, brought to you by the Women's Aerospace Network. You can subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or iTunes, and you can watch full episodes on YouTube. For more information on the Women's Aerospace Network, visit womensaerospace.com or follow us on social media. We hope you will join us again for the next episode of Space for All, where we can all find a place in space.